My name is Denise, and at 34 years old, I'm sitting in my sister's guest bedroom at 2 in the morning watching my phone light up with desperate messages from Marcus. 24 hours ago, he received $550 million from selling his tech company and told me our marriage was over. I helped build that company from nothing, working 18-hour days while he coded in our garage. Now he's begging for my help because of one phone call that could destroy everything. Before I continue with what happened, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. If this story resonates with you, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. Your support means everything, and trust me, you'll want to hear how this all unfolds. Looking back now, I can hardly recognize the naive young woman I was when Marcus and I first met at Northwestern University. It was my junior year, and I was studying corporate law while he was finishing his computer science degree. We bumped into each other quite literally at the campus coffee shop during finals week. His laptop went flying, and I spent the next hour helping him recover his corrupted files, using some tricks I'd learned from my tech-savvy roommate. That moment sparked something between us that felt electric and destined. Marcus had this infectious enthusiasm about technology and how it could change the world. He'd spend hours explaining his ideas to me, drawing diagrams on napkins, his eyes lighting up as he described algorithms and possibilities I barely understood at first. But I learned because when you love someone, you want to understand what drives them. After graduation, while I was grinding through law school, and then starting my career at a prestigious firm specializing in mergers and acquisitions, Marcus was developing what he called revolutionary data compression technology in our tiny apartment. I'd come home after 12-hour days at the firm to find him surrounded by empty energy drink cans and multiple monitors displaying endless lines of code. The company's birth happened at our kitchen table. I still remember that night in late October when Marcus finally had his breakthrough. He'd been working on the algorithm for 6 months, and suddenly everything clicked. He woke me up at 3 in the morning, practically shaking with excitement, showing me compression rates that seemed impossible. That's when I knew we had something special. Using my legal expertise, I incorporated our company Tech Vault Solutions, choosing Delaware for its business-friendly laws, and setting up the structure to protect Marcus's intellectual property. I spent my weekends and late nights drafting our initial contracts, filing patent applications, and creating employment agreements for future hires. The law firm thought I was dedicated to their cases, but really I was building our future on their printer paper and Wi-Fi. Those early days were brutal but beautiful. I'd leave the firm at 7 in the evening, grab takeout, and work on Tech Vault until 2 or 3 in the morning. Marcus would code while I handled everything else: business registration, tax filings, trademark applications, and initial investor outreach. We lived on ramen noodles and dreams, putting every spare dollar into servers and development tools. The sacrifices we made seemed worth it at the time. We postponed our wedding twice because we couldn't afford it. I missed my nephew's first birthday, my college roommate's wedding, and countless family gatherings. When my mother asked when we'd give her grandchildren, I'd always say, "Soon, Mom, just let us get the company stable first." Marcus would squeeze my hand under the table, our silent promise that it would all be worth it. Our first major breakthrough came when I discovered a critical patent loophole that could have destroyed us. A larger company held a broad patent that potentially covered our core technology. I spent 3 straight days analyzing their claims and found a narrow interpretation that allowed us to operate without infringement. That discovery saved us from a lawsuit that would have ended everything before it began. Marcus always said we were building this together. Every small victory, he'd sweep me into his arms and say, "We did it, Denise. You and me against the world." I believed him completely. When we landed our first angel investor a check for $200,000, we danced in our empty office space until security asked us to leave. The growth phase was intoxicating. We moved from our garage to a small office in a tech incubator downtown. I negotiated our lease, getting 3 months free rent and flexibility for expansion. Our first employee was a brilliant programmer named Kevin, who believed in our vision enough to work for equity and a minimal salary. I drew up his employment agreement, making sure to protect both the company and his interests. As we grew, I noticed subtle changes in Marcus. Success suited him in ways that concerned me. He started buying expensive clothes, insisting he needed to look the part for investor meetings. The Honda Civic we shared became a Tesla Model S that he said projected the right image. I still took the bus to work most days, not wanting to deal with downtown parking. He opened separate bank accounts, explaining it was for business expense tracking, when I offered to help manage them, being the one with financial training. He said he didn't want to burden me with minor details. The joint account we'd always shared became his personal account, while I kept my modest salary from the law firm in my own account, most of which went to supporting our household expenses anyway. The secretive phone calls started about 18 months into our growth. Marcus would step out onto our apartment balcony, closing the sliding door behind him. When I asked about them, he'd say it was just investor relations, nothing I needed to worry about. Trust, I told myself, was the foundation of marriage. Then Gregory Hartman entered our lives. He was a venture capitalist with deep pockets and deeper connections, particularly in international markets. Marcus met him at a tech conference in San Francisco and came back buzzing with excitement. Hartman was interested in acquiring companies with promising technology for his portfolio, and TechVault had caught his attention. The acquisition talks began formally 6 months ago. As the company's unofficial legal advisor, despite not being on payroll to avoid conflicts with my day job, I handled much of the due diligence documentation. I spent entire weekends preparing disclosure schedules, organizing intellectual property records, and ensuring our corporate structure was clean for acquisition. During this process, I found several unusual clauses in Hartman's proposed acquisition agreement. There were provisions about technology transfer rights that seemed unnecessarily broad, and something about international subsidiaries that made me uncomfortable. When I brought these concerns to Marcus, he brushed them off, saying Hartman's lawyers had assured him everything was standard. "Trust me, Denise," he said, kissing my forehead, in that dismissive way that had become common. "This is how big deals work. We can't be paranoid about every little detail." But I was trained to be paranoid about every little detail. That's what made me good at my job. I started keeping copies of everything, scanning documents late at night when Marcus was asleep, emailing them to a private account he didn't know about. Call it intuition or professional habit, but something felt wrong. The warning signs were there looking back. Marcus became increasingly secretive about meetings with Hartman. He changed the passwords on company servers, saying it was for security purposes. When I asked for the new passwords, he said he'd written them down somewhere and would get them to me later. He never did. 3 weeks before the sale closed, I overheard part of a conversation that chilled me. Marcus was in his home office with the door cracked, and I heard him say, "Denise doesn't need to know about the offshore components. She'd just complicate things with unnecessary questions." I should have confronted him then, but I was afraid. Not of Marcus, but of what acknowledging his betrayal would mean for us, for everything we'd built. So I continued playing the supportive wife, even as I quietly documented everything I could access. The morning of the sale changed my life forever, though not in the way I'd imagined during all those late nights building TechVault. Marcus woke up earlier than usual, humming in the shower, a sound I hadn't heard from him in months. He put on his most expensive suit, the charcoal gray one that cost more than most people's monthly rent, and spent extra time styling his hair. "Today's the day, babe," he said, barely looking at me as he adjusted his tie in our bedroom mirror. $550 million. Can you believe it? I forced a smile, even though my stomach was churning with unease. "We did it," I said, emphasizing the "we" in a way that felt necessary. The signing was scheduled for 10 in the morning at the Riverside Luxury Hotel's penthouse conference room. Hartman had insisted on the venue, saying a deal of this magnitude deserved a setting to match. I arrived separately from Marcus, having told my firm I was taking a personal day to handle a family matter. Technically not a lie. The conference room was intimidating in its opulence, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a massive mahogany table, leather chairs that probably cost more than my first car. Hartman was already there with his team of lawyers, all of them in identical navy suits like some corporate army. That's when I first noticed her. Sandra. She was introduced as a marketing consultant for the transition team, but something about the way she avoided eye contact with me set off every alarm in my head. She was young, maybe 26, with the kind of polished beauty that came from expensive treatments and careful maintenance. Her dress was professional, but just a touch too tight, her heels just a bit too high for a business meeting. Marcus barely acknowledged me during the signing. I sat at the far end of the table, watching as he signed document after document, his signature authorizing the transfer of everything we'd built. The wire transfer confirmation came through at 11:43 in the morning, $550 million deposited into the company's acquisition account that would then be distributed according to ownership percentages. Hartman popped champagne the cork flying across the room as everyone cheered. Marcus hugged Hartman, then his business partner Thomas, who joined us virtually from Hong Kong, where he was supposedly setting up our Asian operations. Sandra handed Marcus a glass of champagne, her fingers lingering on his, just a moment too long. I stood there holding my untouched glass, feeling like a ghost at my own celebration. "Let's go to lunch," Marcus announced to the room, but his eyes were on me for the first time all morning. Denise and I have a reservation at Chez Laurent. Chez Laurent was our special place where we'd celebrated every major milestone, passing the bar exam, getting our first investor, our 5th wedding anniversary. The fact that he wanted to go there should have been my final warning. The drive there was silent. Marcus kept checking his phone, smiling at messages I couldn't see. When I asked about the unusual clauses I'd noticed in the agreement, he said we could discuss business later. Today was for celebrating. The restaurant was exactly as I remembered: soft lighting, white tablecloths, the smell of fresh bread, and expensive wine. We were seated at our usual table by the window, and Marcus ordered a bottle of champagne without consulting me, another red flag in a morning full of them. After the waiter poured our glasses, Marcus cleared his throat. "Denise, we need to talk." Those 4 words delivered in that tone made my blood run cold. I set down my glass carefully, my lawyer's instincts kicking in, telling me to stay calm, gather information, don't react emotionally. "We've grown apart," he began, reciting what sounded like a rehearsed speech. "This company consumed us, changed us. We're not the same people we were at Northwestern." "Marcus, what are you saying?" I kept my voice steady, even as my hands trembled under the table. "I'm saying that I think it's time we went our separate ways. The sale is complete, and with it this chapter of our lives. You can have a fresh start, do whatever you want, without being tied to the company or to me." The words hung between us like a physical barrier. I stared at him, this man I'd loved for 12 years, supported through everything, sacrificed my own career advancement for, and I didn't recognize him at all. "You're leaving me." The words came out smaller than I intended. "We're leaving each other," he corrected, as if semantics mattered. "And I want to be fair about this. I've already had papers drawn up. Uncontested divorce, clean break. I'm offering you $50,000 to help you relocate and start fresh." $50,000. After everything I'd contributed, all the legal work, the missed opportunities at my firm, the connections I'd leveraged, he was offering me what amounted to a rounding error on his newfound fortune. "The house is in my name," he continued, not meeting my eyes. "I'll need you to move out by tonight. I've already arranged for movers to help you pack if you need them." "Tonight?" The word exploded from me, drawing looks from other diners. "You're kicking me out of my home tonight." "It's my home, Denise. My name is on the deed." He pulled out a manila envelope from his jacket. "The papers are all here. My lawyer says if you sign now, we can have this finalized within 30 days. I opened the envelope with shaking hands, scanning the documents with my trained eye. They were expertly crafted to give me as little as possible, while appearing reasonable to a casual observer. Hidden in the legalese were clauses that would prevent me from making any claim on TechVault's sale proceeds, even retroactively, for work performed. "How long have you been planning this?" I asked, my voice now cold and professional. He had the decency to look slightly ashamed. "It doesn't matter." "How long, Marcus?" 8 months. 8 months. While I was working overtime to make the acquisition seamless, he was planning to discard me like obsolete code. "Is there someone else?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "That's not relevant to our discussion." "Sandra." the marketing consultant who couldn't look me in the eye. His silence was all the confirmation I needed. I stood up, placing my napkin carefully on the table. I'll be out by tonight, but I'm not signing anything without my own lawyer reviewing it. Denise, be reasonable. Why drag this out? Take the $50,000 and move on. It's more than fair. More than fair. After 12 years building a company from nothing, sacrificing everything, $50,000 was more than fair in his mind. I need to pack, I said, gathering my purse. I assume I can at least take my personal belongings. Of course. Take whatever you need. I'm not a monster. The fact that he felt the need to say that suggested otherwise. I drove home in a daze, my mind racing through the legal implications while my heart shattered with each mile. The house we'd bought 3 years ago that I'd spent weekends painting and decorating, turning into our home, was apparently just his house all along. Packing was mechanical. Clothes into suitcases, photos into boxes, careful not to take anything he could claim was his. But while packing my home office, I found my insurance policy, the external hard drive, where I'd backed up everything over the years. Every email, every document, every contract I'd ever reviewed for TechVault. I also went into Marcus's office, something I rarely did anymore since he'd made it clear it was his space. His computer was locked, but he'd made the mistake of writing passwords on a sticky note hidden under his keyboard tray, a habit from our early days he'd never broken. I photographed everything I could find: recent emails, bank statements, documents in folders marked confidential. One folder labeled Shanghai Project contained correspondence I didn't fully understand but knew was important. There were discussions about technology transfer, mentions of applications I knew Marcus had told investors were off limits, and payment structures that went through multiple offshore entities. I took photos of everything, my lawyer's instinct screaming that this was evidence of something significant. Then I carefully put everything back exactly as I'd found it and continued packing. By 7 that evening, my entire life was reduced to what could fit in my car. 12 years of building a life together, and I was driving away with just suitcases and boxes of memories. Jennifer, my older sister, lived 40 minutes away in a suburban house she'd bought after making partner at the federal prosecutor's office. She opened the door before I could knock, having received my tearful phone call an hour earlier. "That bastard," she said, pulling me into a fierce hug. "I never liked him." "You said you loved him at our wedding," I reminded her through tears. "I loved that he made you happy. Past tense. Now I'm going to destroy him." "Jennifer, you can't use your position." "I'm not talking about prosecuting him, though. Give me time and I might find a reason. I'm talking about making sure you get what you deserve from this divorce." We stayed up until 3 in the morning going through the documents I'd photographed. Jennifer's expression grew increasingly grim as she read, occasionally asking me to clarify technical details about the company structure. "Denise," she said finally, "this isn't just about divorce. There's something seriously wrong here. This Shanghai project, these offshore transfers, they look like potential CFIUS violations. CFIUS, the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States. Any technology transfer that could have national security implications required their approval." "Marcus said Hartman's lawyers cleared everything," I said weakly. "Either Hartman's lawyers are incompetent or they're complicit. This compression technology, didn't you tell me it could have military applications?" I nodded. "Theoretically, yes. Secure communications, satellite imagery, that kind of thing. But Marcus always said we were focusing on commercial applications. These emails suggest otherwise." Jennifer pulled up a specific thread. "They're discussing implementation for something called Project Dragonfly. That's not commercial software naming convention." My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Hope you found somewhere safe to stay. The movers said you left peacefully. Thank you for that." I showed it to Jennifer, who snorted. "He has no idea what's coming." I barely slept that night in Jennifer's guest room, my mind replaying every moment of the last year, looking for signs I'd missed. When had Marcus stopped loving me? When had I become an obstacle instead of a partner? Was it when the money became real, or had he been acting all along? Morning came too soon, bringing with it a cascade of consequences neither Marcus nor I had anticipated. It started with a phone call to Jennifer's office line at 7:30. She was in the shower, so I answered habit from years of being the responsible one. Jennifer Parker's office. Ms. Parker, this is Robert Chen from the SEC Enforcement Division. We need to speak with you urgently about Tech Vault Solutions. My blood ran cold. This is her sister Denise. I was involved with Tech Vault. Can I help you? There was a pause. Denise Williams, the corporate lawyer married to Marcus Williams. Soon to be ex-married, but yes. Another pause. Ms. Williams, we're going to need to speak with you as well. Can you and your sister come to our office this morning? Jennifer emerged from the bathroom as I hung up, taking in my pale face. What happened? SEC Enforcement wants to see us, both of us, this morning. She grabbed her phone, scrolling through overnight emails. Her expression darkened with each swipe. It's already started. Look, she showed me a news alert. Federal authorities investigating 550 million tech acquisition for potential security violations. The article was brief but damning. Unnamed sources suggested that TechVault's compression technology had been illegally transferred to foreign entities with ties to military development. Gregory Hartman was being questioned, and authorities were freezing assets related to the transaction pending investigation. My phone exploded with notifications. 43 missed calls from Marcus, dozens of texts growing increasingly frantic. Denise, call me immediately. The FBI is here with a warrant. They've frozen everything. I need you to explain the documents. Please, I know you hate me, but this is serious. Denise, please. I showed them to Jennifer, who smiled grimly. Let him sweat. We have bigger concerns right now. We arrived at the SEC offices downtown at 9 in the morning. Robert Chen was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 40s, with the kind of intense focus that suggested he was very good at his job. He was joined by 2 FBI agents and someone from the U.S. Attorney's Office Jennifer knew professionally. Ms. Williams, Chen began after introductions. What can you tell us about the Shanghai project? I spent the next 3 hours laying out everything I knew, providing context for the documents I'd photographed, explaining the corporate structure I'd helped create. The investigators took notes, occasionally exchanging meaningful looks when I revealed particularly significant details. You had no knowledge of the actual technology transfer, one of the FBI agents asked. None. Marcus specifically excluded me from those discussions. I only handled the legitimate corporate work, the initial structures and patents. Once Hartman became involved, my access was limited. Why did your husband restrict your access? Chen asked. He said I was too conservative, that I'd slow things down with unnecessary legal concerns. He wasn't wrong. If I'd known about any of this, I would have stopped it immediately. We're going to need all documentation you have, Chen said, and we'll need you to testify about the company's formation and your role in it. My client will cooperate fully, Jennifer interjected in her prosecutor voice. But we want it clear from the start that she had no knowledge of or participation in any illegal activities. That's what we're determining, Chen replied carefully. My phone rang. Marcus again. This time Jennifer nodded for me to answer it on speaker. Denise, thank God. His voice was ragged, desperate. I need you here right now. They're seizing everything. Sandra left. She won't answer my calls. Thomas has disappeared. His phone is disconnected. I don't understand what's happening. What's happening, I said calmly, is that your illegal technology transfer to China has been discovered. Silence. Then, what are you talking about? The Shanghai Project, Marcus. Project Dragonfly. The offshore accounts. The military applications you swore we'd never pursue. I can explain everything. It's not what it looks like. Hartman said it was all legal, that his lawyers had cleared everything. Please, you have to help me. You know the documents better than anyone. You can explain that I didn't mean for this to happen. You didn't mean for what to happen, to get caught, or to betray your country for money. It wasn't like that. He was crying now. Thomas set it up. He had connections in Hong Kong. He said it was just commercial development expanding into Asian markets. I didn't know about the military stuff until it was too late. When was it too late, Marcus? When you took the first payment, when you transferred the source code, or when you collected $550 million yesterday? I'll give it all back. Every penny. Just please help me fix this. I know I hurt you, but we built this together, right? You can't let it all be destroyed. Jennifer made a cutting motion across her throat, signaling me to end the call. Marcus, I'm with federal investigators right now. I suggest you contact your lawyer. Wait, you're what? Denise, you can't. I hung up. Chen leaned forward. Mrs. Williams, we're prepared to offer you a cooperation agreement. Full immunity in exchange for your complete assistance in this investigation. She'll need to review the terms with independent counsel, Jennifer said. But in principle, we're willing to cooperate. The next several hours were a blur of document review testimony and strategic planning. I provided the investigators with access to my backup drives, walked them through every contract and agreement I drafted, identified which decisions were mine and which were made without my knowledge. The smoking gun came from an email I'd photographed in Marcus's office. It was from Thomas to Marcus, dated 6 months ago. Hartman's Beijing contacts confirmed. Technology transfer will happen post-acquisition through subsidiary. Delete this after reading. Marcus hadn't deleted it. Arrogance or stupidity, I couldn't tell which. By afternoon, the full scope of the scheme was becoming clear. Thomas had been working with foreign intelligence services all along, using Marcus's greed and Hartman's connections to facilitate the illegal transfer of technology with clear military applications. The compression algorithm could be used for secure military communications and satellite surveillance systems. Marcus had known enough to be culpable, but probably not enough to understand the full implications of what he was doing. He saw dollar signs, not national security threats. Sandra. It turned out was Thomas's cousin, strategically placed to keep Marcus distracted and compliant. She'd fled the moment the investigation became public, probably warned by Thomas, who had disappeared to a non-extradition country. That evening, Marcus called again. This time he was with his lawyers, who wanted to discuss a mutually beneficial arrangement. Mrs. Williams, the lead attorney began smoothly, your husband is prepared to offer you a substantial settlement in exchange for your assistance with his defense. How substantial? Jennifer asked. Not because we were interested, but to gauge their desperation. $20 million plus the house and all marital assets. From $50,000 to $20 million in 24 hours. Fear was a powerful motivator. My client's cooperation with federal authorities isn't for sale, Jennifer responded. And any attempt to obstruct justice by bribing a witness will be reported immediately. That's not what we're suggesting, the lawyer backpedaled quickly. We're simply trying to resolve the divorce proceedings favorably while discussing legitimate legal cooperation. Here's what's going to happen, I said, finding my voice. I'm going to tell the truth, the complete truth, about what I knew, what I did, and what Marcus hid from me. If that helps him, fine. If it doesn't, that's his consequence to bear. Denise, please, Marcus broke in. I'm facing 20 years in federal prison. Sandra was working with them the whole time. She used me. They all used me. The irony of him feeling used and discarded wasn't lost on me. Like you used me, I asked quietly. Building your company while planning to throw me away. That was different. I was going to take care of you. $50,000 is taking care of me. I was emotional. I would have given you more eventually. Even now, facing federal charges, he couldn't admit what he'd done to me was wrong. It was still about what he might have done, not what he should have done. The meeting with Marcus and his lawyers continued for another hour, but it was pointless. They wanted me to lie to say I knew about and approved the technology transfers, taking partial responsibility to dilute Marcus's culpability. They offered increasingly desperate bribes, eventually reaching $50 million money Marcus didn't even have access to anymore. I declined everything except what was legally mine, half of all marital assets acquired before the illegal activities began, the house that should have been in both our names, and my rightful recognition as co-founder of TechVault, which would allow me to participate in restructuring the company once the criminal matters were resolved. Marcus's lawyers tried to argue that I had no claim to the company since I was never officially on payroll. That's when I produced the operating agreement Marcus had signed 3 years ago, recognizing my sweat equity and granting me 40% ownership. He'd forgotten about it, probably because he'd been drunk on startup success when he signed it back when he still loved me and wanted to make things official. "This is notarized," his lawyer said, examining the document. "This is legally binding." "I know," I replied. "I wrote it." Marcus stared at me across the conference table, and for the first time since this all began, I saw fear in his eyes. Not fear of prison or financial ruin, but fear of me. He'd finally realized that the woman he'd dismissed and discarded knew more about his business than he did. The next morning brought what Marcus had dreaded: formal federal charges. The indictment was unsealed, revealing the full scope of the investigation. Marcus was charged with conspiracy to violate the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, lying to federal investigators, and money laundering. Hartman faced similar charges, while Thomas was charged in absentia with espionage-related offenses. I watched the news coverage from Jennifer's couch, feeling strangely detached as reporters discussed the company I'd helped build. They got so many details wrong, crediting Marcus with innovations that were collaborative efforts, ignoring the legal framework that had made the company possible in the first place. My phone rang constantly. Reporters wanted statements, former colleagues wanted gossip, and investors wanted to know if there was any salvageable value in TechVault. I ignored them all, except for one call from Kevin, our first employee. "Denise, what's happening? They're saying we might all lose our jobs. The FBI took all our computers. Is the company going to survive?" "I don't know yet, Kevin, but I promise I'm doing everything I can to protect the legitimate parts of the business and the employees who weren't involved in this." "We weren't involved in anything. Most of us didn't even know about the Hartman deal until it was announced. Marcus kept everything compartmentalized." That compartmentalization, which had frustrated me as a spouse, might now save the company. If most employees were unaware of the illegal activities, the legitimate business operations could potentially continue. I spent the afternoon with the federal investigators, this time accompanied by my own lawyer, someone Jennifer recommended who specialized in white-collar crime. We went through every document again, creating a clear timeline of when illegal activities began and who was involved. The picture that emerged was damning for Marcus, but potentially salvageable for TechVault. The core technology was legitimate, developed before Thomas's involvement. The patents I'd filed were clean. Most contracts with domestic clients were unaffected. Only the Shanghai project and related transfers were criminal. "Mrs. Williams," Chen said after reviewing everything, "you're in a unique position. You have legitimate ownership claims to the company, deep knowledge of its operations, and clean hands regarding the criminal conduct. Would you consider taking over operations while the legal matters are resolved?" It was the opportunity I hadn't dared hope for. Not just vindication, but the chance to save what we'd built and run it correctly. "I'd need full authority," I said. "No interference from Marcus or his representatives. Given that his assets are frozen and he's likely facing incarceration, that shouldn't be a problem. We'll need court approval, but I think a judge would see the wisdom in having legitimate leadership to preserve value for creditors and investors." That evening, Marcus's mother called. I'd always been close to Patricia, closer than to my own mother in many ways. She was crying. "Denise, honey, I'm so sorry. I had no idea what he was doing to you. When I saw the divorce papers at his house, $50,000 after everything you've done, I raised him better than this. It's not your fault, Patricia. Can you forgive him, not take him back? God, no, you deserve better. But maybe help him through this. He's still my son despite everything." I thought about it carefully. "I'll tell the truth, Patricia. Nothing more, nothing less. If the truth helps him, then he'll be helped. If it doesn't, then he'll face the consequences of his choices." She was quiet for a moment. "That's more than fair. You're a good woman, Denise. He never deserved you." After we hung up, I sat in Jennifer's guest room, looking at a photo from our wedding. Marcus and I looked so young, so happy, so convinced we'd conquer the world together. In a way, we had. We'd built something worth $550 million. We just hadn't survived the success. Within 3 days, the full scope of Marcus's deception became clear. The forensic accountants found offshore accounts in the Caymans and Cyprus containing kickbacks from the technology transfer. Marcus had personally received $12 million in addition to his share of the sale proceeds. He'd hidden it all from me, from the IRS, from everyone. Sandra had indeed vanished, but not before cleaning out the joint account she'd somehow convinced Marcus to open with her 2 months ago. Another $3 million gone. The FBI found evidence she'd been recording their conversations, likely gathering blackmail material or intelligence for Thomas's handlers. Thomas himself was tracked to Vietnam, which had no extradition treaty with the United States. He'd been planning this for over 2 years, using Marcus's ambition and naivety as cover for his espionage activities. The technology was already being reverse engineered by foreign military contractors. I was formally appointed as interim CEO of TechVault by federal court order with a mandate to preserve legitimate business operations and maximize value for creditors. My first day in the office was surreal. Employees who'd barely noticed me during my unofficial advisory role now looked to me for leadership and reassurance. "I know you're all scared," I said at the all-hands meeting. "Your jobs, your stock options, your futures are all uncertain. I can't promise everything will be okay, but I can promise complete transparency going forward. No more secrets, no more compartmentalization. We're going to rebuild this company on a foundation of integrity." Kevin started clapping, then others joined in. By the end, the entire team was on their feet. They needed someone to believe in, and apparently I was it. The next weeks were brutal but productive. I worked 18-hour days, not in service of Marcus's dreams, but my own vision for what TechVault could be. I renegotiated contracts with clients, assuring them our technology was uncompromised. I hired a new CTO from my network, someone with impeccable credentials and zero connections to the scandal. Most importantly, I secured new funding from clean sources. A group of investors led by a woman named Patricia Chang, who'd built her fortune in legitimate tech companies, saw the potential in TechVault's core technology and my leadership. "I've been watching this unfold," she told me over coffee. "Your husband was a fool to underestimate you. I won't make the same mistake." We closed a $40 million funding round that valued the cleaned-up company at $200 million. Not the inflated valuation of the illegal deal, but honest money for honest work. Marcus, meanwhile, was falling apart. His lawyer sent increasingly desperate messages. Would I testify on his behalf about his character? No. Would I provide documents that might exonerate him? Only what the court required. Would I visit him? Absolutely not. He was under house arrest, wearing an ankle monitor, living in the house he'd kicked me out of. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. He sent letters, actual handwritten letters, since his electronic communications were monitored. "Denise, I know I've lost the right to ask anything of you, but please know that I'm sorry. Not just because I got caught, but because I threw away the best thing in my life. You were right about everything: the contracts, the patents, the offshore structures. I should have listened. I should have valued you. I should have loved you the way you deserved." I read each letter once, then filed them away. They were evidence of his state of mind, potentially useful for the divorce proceedings, nothing more. The divorce was finalized in record time. With Marcus facing federal charges and his assets frozen, he had no leverage to contest anything. I received the house, all legitimate marital assets, and formal recognition of my 40% stake in TechVault. The $50,000 insult was never mentioned again. 6 months later, I stood in a transformed TechVault office. We'd moved to a new building, symbolic of our fresh start. The company was thriving under legitimate leadership. We'd launched 3 new products, all built on the original compression technology, but developed ethically and sold transparently. Our valuation had reached $300 million, and we were profitable for the first time. Every employee had stock options, and I'd instituted profit sharing that ensured everyone benefited from our success. Marcus had pled guilty to reduced charges in exchange for testifying against Hartman, and providing intelligence about Thomas's network. He received an 8-year sentence eligible for parole in 5 with good behavior. The judge called him a cautionary tale about greed and ambition unchecked by ethics. I didn't attend the sentencing, but Jennifer did. She said Marcus looked for me in the courtroom, scanning the gallery repeatedly. When he gave his allocution, he spoke about betraying not just his country, but the person who'd been his true partner. "Too little, too late," Jennifer had said. Patricia Marcus's mother visited me at the new office. She brought homemade cookies, the same kind she'd made when Marcus and I were struggling students. "I'm proud of you," she said simply. "You've built something wonderful here. Something honest." "I learned from the best and worst examples," I replied. She understood what I meant. The employees threw a party for the 1-year anniversary of my taking over. Kevin gave a speech about how I'd saved not just their jobs, but their faith in what technology companies could be. The new CTO presented me with a framed patent, the latest one filed under my leadership with Denise Williams, CEO and inventor, prominently displayed. I'd started dating again cautiously. A professor at Northwestern I'd met at an alumni event. He was kind, steady, and completely uninterested in the tech world beyond using his smartphone. We took things slowly, both of us carrying baggage from failed marriages. "I Googled you," he admitted on our 3rd date. "The whole scandal, the trial, everything. And you're still here." "Actually, I'm more interested now. You took something broken and made it better. That takes real strength." It did take strength, more than I'd known I possessed. But strength I'd learned wasn't about never falling. It was about how you rebuilt after the collapse. Sandra eventually surfaced in Montenegro, posting Instagram photos from yachts and parties. The FBI couldn't touch her there, but her lifestyle suggested the money wouldn't last long. Thomas remained in Vietnam, though rumors suggested he was under surveillance by multiple intelligence agencies. Hartman was convicted and sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. And Marcus. He wrote me one final letter from federal prison 6 months into his sentence. "Denise, I won't bother you again after this. I just wanted you to know that I see it now, all of it. Every late night you worked on our contracts, every sacrifice you made, every warning you gave that I ignored. You were the foundation of everything good we built, and I was the rot that almost destroyed it. I'm glad you saved it. I'm glad you're thriving. I'm glad you're free of me. You deserve every success, every happiness, every good thing coming your way. I'll never forgive myself for throwing away the privilege of being your partner. All my love, always too late, Marcus." I kept that letter not out of sentiment but as a reminder that love without respect is worthless, that success without integrity is failure, that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the door to your best life. Looking back now, 2 years since that morning when Marcus received $550 million and kicked me out, I can see the journey clearly. The signs I missed, the strength I found, the success that came from failure. The company Marcus and I built together was worth $500 million to criminals and spies. The company I rebuilt from its ashes is worth something far more valuable. It's worth the trust of our clients, the loyalty of our employees, and the integrity of doing business the right way. I think about the young woman I was working 18-hour days to support Marcus's dreams while neglecting my own. I don't blame her for not seeing what was coming. Love makes us blind to faults we'd spot instantly in strangers. But I also don't pity her. She was building skills, knowledge, and resilience she'd need for what came next. The truth about success is that it's not just about the destination, but about who you become on the journey. Marcus became someone who would sell out his country and his wife for money. I became someone who could rebuild from betrayal and create something better. My therapist, who I started seeing after the divorce, asked me once if I regretted marrying Marcus. I thought about it for a long time before answering. "No," I said finally. "I regret that he became someone who could hurt me so badly. I regret the years I spent supporting his ego instead of building my own dreams. But without that experience, I wouldn't be who I am now. And I really like who I am now." The business philosophy I've developed is simple but revolutionary in the tech world: radical transparency. Every major decision is documented. Every employee knows our financial status. Every client understands exactly what they're buying and how we'll deliver it. No secrets, no compartmentalization, no hidden agendas. It's the opposite of how Marcus ran things, and that's precisely the point. We've become known in the industry as the ethical alternative. Companies that got burned by shady deals come to us for honest partnerships. Employees fleeing toxic startup culture join us for sustainable careers. Investors looking for clean returns fund our growth. The new investor, Patricia Chang, has become something of a mentor. She told me something that stuck. Men like Marcus see business as war, where you win by defeating others. Women like us know business is gardening. You win by growing something sustainable that feeds everyone. I've instituted policies that would have seemed crazy in the old tech vault. 6 months of parental leave for all employees. Profit sharing that includes our janitors and receptionists. A hard stop at 6 in the evening because breakthrough code written at 2 in the morning by exhausted programmers is usually garbage anyway. Kevin, our first employee, who's now our VP of Engineering, told me the other day that he'd been recruited by a competitor offering double his salary. "But I'm not leaving," he said. "This place, what you've built, it's special. We're doing work that matters without destroying ourselves in the process." That's success to me now. Not the size of the exit or the valuation metrics, but the lives we improve and the integrity we maintain. My personal life has also transformed. The Professor Daniel and I have been together for a year now. He proposed last month not with a dramatic gesture but with a quiet conversation about building a life together. I said yes with conditions. Separate bank accounts. Both names on everything we buy together. Complete financial transparency. A prenup that protects both of us. "That's very romantic," he said, laughing. "It's very practical," I corrected. "Romance is nice, but respect and clarity are better." He agreed to everything, even suggesting additions to protect my company ownership. A partner, not a dependent. A supporter, not a savior. Everything Marcus promised to be, but never was. Sometimes I drive past the federal prison where Marcus is serving his sentence. Not to visit, just to remind myself of the path not taken. I could have signed those divorce papers for $50,000 and disappeared. I could have taken his bribes to lie for him. I could have let bitterness consume me. Instead, I chose to build something better from the ruins of what we'd created together. The deepest lesson I've learned is that betrayal isn't really about the person who betrays you. It's about discovering who you are when everything you thought was solid crumbles. Some people break. Some people become bitter. And some people like me discover they were always stronger than they knew. Marcus thought he was leaving me with nothing when he kicked me out that night. He thought $50,000 was generous, that I should be grateful for scraps from the feast I'd helped prepare. He thought Sandra was an upgrade, that success meant trading up in everything, including wives. He was wrong about everything, but especially about me. The woman who packed her belongings in tears that night, who drove to her sister's house feeling worthless and discarded, she was carrying something Marcus never recognized: the intelligence, integrity, and instinct that had actually built Tech Vault. He had the coding skills, but I had everything else. Now when young women reach out to me sharing stories of being undervalued in their relationships or careers, I tell them this: your worth isn't determined by who recognizes it. Your contributions don't become less real because someone else claims credit. Your strength doesn't diminish because someone tried to break you. Sometimes the person who discards you is actually setting you free. Sometimes the worst betrayal leads to the best revelation that you were never the supporting character in someone else's story. You were always the hero of your own. Marcus got $550 million and thought he'd won everything. 24 hours later, he was begging for my help because he'd actually lost everything that mattered. The money was frozen, the relationship was fake. The freedom was gone, and the woman who'd been his true partner was beyond his reach forever. I got my self-respect, my company, my future, and most importantly, my freedom. I won everything that actually mattered. The phone still rings sometimes with unknown numbers that I suspect are Marcus calling from prison. I never answer. There's nothing left to say. He's serving his sentence and I'm living my life. The scales are balanced not by revenge, but by truth. TechVault's latest valuation puts us at $400 million, approaching the legitimate value Marcus threw away for dirty money. We'll probably go public next year, a clean IPO with transparent financials and ethical practices. The roadshow will tell the story of a company that survived scandal through principled leadership. They'll probably ask about Marcus, the co-founder, serving federal time. I'll tell them the truth. He was a brilliant programmer who lost his way. The company succeeded despite his choices, not because of them. The real story isn't his fall, but our rise. Because that's what this is ultimately. Not a story about betrayal or revenge or even justice. It's a story about rebuilding, about discovering that the person you were trying to support was actually holding you back, about learning that being kicked out can be the push you needed to finally step up. Marcus got $550 million and lost everything. I lost everything and gained my whole life. If that's not poetic justice, I don't know what is. I want to ask you something, and I'd really love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had someone underestimate your worth only to realize later what they'd lost? How did you rebuild from betrayal? Share your story. Because we all need to hear that we're not alone in these struggles. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that their current struggle might be the setup for their greatest comeback. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, sometimes the person who breaks your heart is actually setting you free to find your true strength. Take care of yourselves. Value your worth, and never settle for less than the respect you deserve.